So I see what you did here. I I'm guessing you okay, yeah, you mentioned it that you wanted to use Ekene's work. So this is fine. The only thing I'll say is actually it can be better, to be honest. I feel like so the color choice is where I have a little bit of a challenge with. Um the blue is really close to her skin in terms of tone. So look at this. Let's This is her skin color, and then this is the blue. If you look at these two colors in terms of, like, if I have to zoom out, I can barely see the difference between the two of them. Like, they're really close to each other in terms of contrast. There's barely no contrast. So I would suggest you use, for a dark skin like this, I'll suggest you use brighter colors. This blue, if you had used a brighter color for the blue, then it would have, popped out better because her skin is too close to the brown. Yeah, that's basically it. Then I would also not make this like super saturated. It depends, because this is already on the saturated end. As you can see, if you look at the color wheel on the screen, you can see that the blue color you've chosen is way too, like, is up to the end. It's not like fully up to the end, but it's really close to the end. I'll suggest you stay somewhere around here. Maybe a color like this. Maybe a color like this is better. Something that's not too saturated. Like, this is way too saturated. Then for the patterns, it's also too close. Like, look at the color of the pattern. Look at, like, if I zoom out, this whole thing is very, very difficult to see. Like, there's barely any contrast between these three colors. So and this is fine, like, your choice of making the greenish color on the patterns on the clothes look close to the blue is fine in terms of analogous colors, because you don't want the eyes to get lost in this area. We don't want the eyes to get lost in this area. So it's fine that you chose an analogous color between, as a distinction between these two, so that we just look at everything as a whole and not get too caught up in the contrast between the two. But again, it's still back to the contrast between this color and her skin. It's too close. It's too close in terms of contrast. So this color has to be brighter, like a lot brighter than this, so that we can see the contrast. Then and then also reduce the saturation. Like, it's way to try to avoid right off the bat using like saturated colors that are too saturated. Try to stay clear from this edge, like this. Look at my color wheel on the left. Try to stay clear from this colors at the extremes. Colors at the extremes, the extreme end. So if you stay on this left extreme end, you're going to have grays, white, black, and grays. But then if you stay on this other end, you're also going to have like super saturated colors. Try to avoid the two ends and try to stay somewhere maybe in the middle, or not too close to the ends, the edges there. But then also, one thing to add is the area, like, where you want the focus to be. So for example, and I think I pointed out, you were not in the last class. I don't know if you watched the videos. Please watch the video again. Like, it's really, really important for you to grasp this concept. The main concept is to keep the eyes here. That's the main concept of colors, of coloring and design. Generally, we are designing the car. That's why it's called design. It's not creation. It's design. Character design, not character creation. It's design because it's designed. By design, our eyes, everything should be leading up to the face, everything. And Ekene has already designed this cloth in a very brilliant way that showcases this concept of leading the eyes up to the face, the colors should also complement that. They should also do the same thing. So the colors have to be doing the same thing as well. So anything that we need to do to keep the eyes, mostly in the area, the upper part of the body, this part is absolutely important, especially the face. If you have to choose between the face and the whole entire torso, we should always choose the face, which is why this component shouldn't be as saturated as it shouldn't get too saturated. This color choice you have made is actually not bad at all, but then again, it's still the same. I'm still having the same challenge of where this color, this color, this color, almost all the colors are too close to each other in terms of there's barely any contrast. The neck chain is lost to her skin. Like there's no difference between her skin tone, her neck, and the necklace. So I would suggest that you go back and rework this thing because you have the PSD file. If I had the PSD files, I would have adjusted these things for you to see, and then you see a whole lot of difference. But and I hope that when you do your coloring, you separate all these different components, because it just makes your life easier. If you have all these things separated, you can just go in and start adjusting colors. So this part, the neck has to be way more like it has to be the most saturated. I feel like this necklace and everything, all these things going on here, all these gold trims, they should all be saturated. But when I say saturated, again, I'm not saying go all the way to the end. You don't want to do that. Like, that's not the best way to design. Keep it somewhere here. Hi guys. So in the fall of 2025, I got to host an 8-week masterclass titled Ethnic Character Design for Animation, which had a decent number of signups. I got to share a ton of rich information, secrets, industry insights that I used to craft an award-winning character like Noni, Eyes of Wakanda. The sessions were archived and compiled into a digestible course. The course will be available for purchase on Gumroad from 26th of February 2026. If you are an intermediate level artist seeking to diversify your portfolio to include culturally grounded characters in animation, then this is for you. Thank you for listening, and see you on February 26th. So I feel like this entire thing should be gold, like proper gold. Or if you want to do bronze, that's fine, but even bronze is also shiny as well. Bronze is also a very shiny material. So if you want, you can make this part bronze. I'm not going to bother to paint the details. I just want to see if I can point this thing out for you to kind of get the concept. All these things also bronze. Bronze. This red cuff that she's wearing is a no-no. Like, the color combination is a no-no, because this now looks like the most saturated part of the painting. If I zoom out, my attention is drawn to this part and this part, which is a no. Like, you don't want this at all. You want the most saturated parts to be these parts. So what I would say is get rid of this red. If I were you, if I could suggest, I would suggest you make it transparent, because I think that's what Ekene tried to do. She wanted it to be made of glass. I know they can also be colored glass, but I'll suggest you make this thing like colorless, just so that we don't attention is not drawn. We'll be able to see the reflection, like the specular highlights, but we will not be drawn to it in terms of color. Yeah, and then all these things, all this edge, all this part should be gold. They should be lined with gold, because it's leading our eyes up to the character's face. Gold. Actually, you need more saturated gold here. So if this was the color, for example, then you can now go in and add highlights there, like that. because gold will always reflect, the environment. So, and the environments would have different colors. So you can have something close to cool colors at some points. Actually, I'm going to sample this and use it. Yeah, so something like this. So I'm just giving you an idea of what I think the necklace should look like. Of course, it will have all those definitions and all those things in there, but you see all of a sudden that, it pops because it stands out. When you zoom out, you can always see that definition, like the blue, the yellow stands out of the blue. Then of course this blue is already way too dark because it's close to her skin tone. So your blue should be, like I said, it should be somewhere, should be desaturated somewhere away from. You can still make it dark if you want, but definitely desaturated. So something like this. Because now if you put this beside the skin, there's kind of contrast. If we zoom out, there's contrast there. Yeah, something like this for the blue. If you want, you can make it a little bit saturated, a little bit, but try to make it avoid going too dark. Actually, I think this color is fine. This color is fine. I wish I had the PSD file, like your PSD file, so I would just make all these adjustments on the fly for you to see. But I have to attend to other students, so you have to go back and do this yourself. Yeah, and then this one too, the same thing is going to have its own highlights here and there, definitions. Let me see. Okay, looks like an X. It's going to have its own definitions there. Yeah, so then this thing should be transparent. Like we don't need to see reds. We don't want to see reds at all. Because once you start introducing reds, here's the problem. Like once you already have like a blue, in terms of color schemes, you have a blue, which is the major color. Then you have red, then you have gold. And then reds. So if you add, well, there's the browns here as well. Let's say brown. Then before you add red. Now when you have a color scheme and the red is just way too dark. It's just way too dark. So when you have a color scheme like this, the assumption is that the red will be in the areas that are close to the face. But when I'm looking at your stuff, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing the reds, away from the face, which does not work at all. So those are my observations, and hopefully, okay, yeah. In terms of the damage, so what I was expecting is that in terms of damage, is that you guys would come up with very different damage concepts that are different from what I did demonstrated in class. I noticed that most people are doing mod. I didn't expect to see the same thing. I was expecting to see other things like fire damage, wear and tear and stuff. I'm just seeing the same thing. it'd have been nice to see something different anyway. Yeah. This thing dangling doesn't work. Like, you don't want in production, in a CGI pipeline, this kind of thing dangling here might not be a good idea. So I'll suggest, instead of making it dangle, I'll suggest you tear it, like, rip it in parts. Like, rip it, make it like really ripped, than having it dangle long, like the whole long thing dangling like that. This amount of damage here is a lot. It'd have been better if you had like bends, maybe this thing bent like this or something like that. And then all this glass, this thing on our wrist, since it's made of glass, maybe it will shatter, like it will be shattered or broken and stuff. So yeah, that's what the mod thing. It can even be better because how do you have this much mod on these parts of her dress, and then this part does not have mod? Like, the question I'll be asking is, how did the mod jump to this part without touching this part? So you need to look into that. If you need the PSD file, let me know and I'll share it with you. Thank you very much.